I recently bought a 9-year-old retired police car at a state surplus auction. This car was staged at the auction lot for a couple months even before the auction started. Then it sat for another 3 weeks before I even was able to get the car home. But before that, and just like so many other fleet vehicles, I am certain this car received only the very basic and exterior paint care and was never garaged during its 9-year career in law enforcement. Now, this car was at the auction lot and generally it was in clean condition, but I know I could get it a whole lot better, and with using only a combination of some basic products that you can find at nearly any auto parts store, some specialty products that I've used in the past and had good success and experience with, and finally, just simply some time and patience. An overview of the items and products I'm using include a pair of wash buckets and 2 wash mitts, an assortment of brushes I collected from a dollar store and elsewhere, car soap that you can find at any auto parts store, a $100 upholstery cleaner from Walmart, and there's cheaper versions out there too, an assortment of buffing pads from jegs.com that are in various colors and represent different levels of cut, a Porter Cable Variable Speed Dual Action Polisher, which is on Amazon for $100, an old towel, an assortment of microfibers, my favorite dollar store all-purpose cleaner, spray-on tire shine, a rubbing compound and polish from 3M, which came from an area paint supply store, a top coat paint sealant from Turbo Wax, and finally, some generic detail spray, clay bar, and masking tape. Now, this collection of cleaning and detail supplies were purchased at different times over the past few years, but if you were to go out today and buy them all at the same time, it would cost somewhere around $490. Step 1 is to start with a thorough rinsing of the car, beginning with the top surfaces so that as much of the dirt and grime rolls down the vehicle. Continue with rinsing the sides and push that loose dirt down and off the car. With the dollar store spray and brush, I scrubbed off the auction grease pencil markings from the glass. For $1, this cleaner is pretty potent and needs to be diluted based on what it's being used on. It will, however, remove any wax or surface protectants, but since I'm protecting and sealing the paint afterwards, I'm not really worried about the overspray. I used a generous amount of car soap in the bucket for a thick lather to help lift and carry away the dirt. Again, starting from the top of the car and working down. Now, the weather this day was heavily overcast and cool, and the soap in the water wasn't evaporating quickly. On warmer, brighter days, I would wash and rinse one panel at a time in order to avoid the soap and water evaporating before the rinse. Again, using the dollar store spray, I liberally apply the cleaner to one tire and wheel at a time, work it in with the scrub brush, then rinse and move on to the next wheel. Using the second wash mitt and the soapy water, open both doors on the side of the car and get the door jambs, the frame, the floor sills, door latches and hinges, and any other nooks and crannies that are in there. Rinse it clean, and since the interior will be detailed afterwards, I'm not too worried about soap or rinse water getting inside the car. Continue with the second wash mitt and pop the hood to clean the hidden edges of the hood and the fenders. Wash the hidden portion of the cowl, the wheel wells, the radiator cover, airbox, battery, and any other engine parts you can get to. Pop the trunk and clean the hidden edges of the quarter panel, below the rear window too, and the drip channel all the way down to the rear bumper. Step 2 is the mechanical decontamination of the paint using a generic detail spray and a clay bar. With clay, I like to knead it and twist it to warm it up a bit and then flatten it out like a pancake. Even with the car wet, it still takes a lubricant like a detail spray to keep the clay gliding over the surface and not to leave scuff marks. I rub down a section of the car until the roughness in the paint is removed and the clay slides easily over top. Even though the car was just washed and looks clean, you can still see the contaminants that were once embedded in the paint that are now pulled into the clay. When the clay gets grimy like this, just re-knead it and twist it up again and reuse it. Move on to the next section or panel, spraying and claying until smooth again. After all the paint surfaces are clayed and smooth, I rinse down the car, and you can physically see just how much nicer and cleaner the paint looks now. Afterwards, I dry the car down with a microfiber towel. Step 3 is to move into the interior with the dollar store cleaner and upholstery cleaner. When cleaning the interior fabric, I start with a light spray of clean water from the Bissell and a few squirts from the dollar store cleaner. I'm careful not to soak the seats though, which will take just a long time to dry if I use too much water or cleaner. And too much cleaner on the fabric may damage the material as well. Agitate the seat material with a small scrub brush in order to get into all the seams and contours of the seat. Repeat the process for each panel of the seat too. The Bissell has a clean water spray, an embedded scrub brush and a nozzle, and the vacuum just makes quick work of cleaning the seats. Once done, I'm always surprised by how much of the nastiness that gets pulled out of the seat fabric. And, well, here's what it looks like. The vinyl flooring in the Police Interceptor makes cleaning the floors easy using the dollar store spray and an assortment of scrub brushes. Be sure to move the front seats into the full rearward position in order to get under the seats as much as possible. Clean the seat tracks, the sills, the hump, outside sides of the seat, the pedals, the footwells too. Wipe clean with a towel, move the front seats to their forwardmost position, and repeat in the rear of the car. Something I like so much about this cleaner is that it dries clean and it doesn't have any residue. It isn't sticky or slimy either, which makes it great to clean the floors and the pedals without making anything slippery. Step 4 is to buff out the paint surface to remove the light scratches and swirl marks left behind from the past 9 years of little care. Now, each car manufacturer uses their own makeup of paints and clears, and each one has a different level of hard or softness. I found the paint on these Crown Victorias to be pretty hardy, and when I'm buffing these cars, I like to use a fabric pad and a 3M polishing compound. It goes on easy, a little goes a long way, and it comes off easy too. I start off with a few dabs on the pad. I set the buffer speed to the lowest, slowest setting to smear around the polish without throwing it off. Then, once it's spread out, I speed up the buffer to speed setting number 5 to work in the polish. I go over all the painted surfaces on the car, working about a 2-foot squared section at a time, moving the buffer in a crosshatch pattern to get a good even coverage. Now, this is a lengthy process, and it can take a few hours depending on how pervasive those scratches are. On other cars, I would use a step approach to buffing where I would use progressively gentler compounds and foam pads until I get that perfect finish. But again, on these cars, I found that I could get the same result in a fraction of the time by going straight to a fabric pad and the 3M polish. Step 5 involves protecting the paint once polished out. At this point, the paint is in a bare and it's in a delicate condition and needs to be protected from the contaminants and the environment. There's plenty of options for top coat protection, but what I found that works fabulous is this TurboWax paint sealant. This paint sealant is entirely man-made. Unlike a natural Carnauba wax, this stuff goes on super easy. It goes on in a very thin coat, and it comes off super easy too. It lasts about 6 months, which is about double the time of a Carnauba. The shine that it gives is eye-opening and impressive. Just like with the polish, a little goes a long way, and it spreads easily. This paint sealant can be applied with a hand applicator, but I'm using a buffer again just to speed up the process. A little squirt on a white foam pad. I set the speed to the low speed setting again and smear it on. After spreading it out, I speed up the buffer to a speed setting number 3 and work the product over the paint surface in a crosshatch pattern. Because the molecules are so fine in this product, it's best to wear gloves, and you have to tape off any plastic parts on the car, or it will stain the black plastic and leave behind a white chalky residue. I coat all the painted surfaces on the car, as well as the windows, the windshield, and the back window too. It takes about an hour to lay down the paint sealant over the entire car. It cures to a white haze, which typically takes about 10 minutes after laying it on. To remove the cured layer, I use a buffer again, but with a soft black foam pad this time, and at a speed setting of 3. Now, about the time I got started removing the paint sealant, it started to drizzle. So I moved the car into the garage and I finished the job there. Later on, that drizzle turned into a rain, which turned into a downpour that went on for about the next 3 days. Step 6 is the finishing touches on the exterior. Once the rain stopped, I pulled the car out of the garage and found some shade in the driveway, and now you can start to see just how nice and just how much shine you got in the paint now. I dressed the tires with a spray-on tire shine. I got this stuff from Costco. It was a 3-can pack for about $15. I like this dressing because it doesn't fling off while driving, and it gives a more natural look to the tires without being overly glossy or slimy too. Because the tires were so dry from never being dressed in the past, I applied a second coat after the first coat soaked in. The tops of each of the side windows always seem to get that line of funk on the top. I found a quick and easy way to remove it, and that's by using a fine grade steel wool. Just a few swipes takes that film off and leaves a nice clean surface. Step 7 is the final interior cleaning. There's not a lot of nooks and crannies in the interior of this car, so the job is a little easier than usual. Regardless, the tools are the same, including a few Q-tips, soaped and spray detailer, and run along the air vent louvers, the seams around the radio, the buttons and recesses, and other hard to clean areas. A final wipe down with the detail spray and a microfiber on the dash, the gauges, the rearview mirror, the dome light, the door panels, and finally the door jambs will complete the job. Once done, those microfibers and towels, they get soaked and washed out, wrung dry, and thrown in a washer and dryer to be reused again. Afterwards, there's nothing left to do but to admire a job well done and appreciate the depth and cleanliness of the paint and the cleanliness of the interior, and to admire the time and the effort that went into finishing this job.